friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster. And for any of you listeners who have been watching this season of the Boulet Brothers Dragula, they did a challenge a couple weeks ago that got me so excited because it was based on the concept of the dark ride. And
Ooh.
yeah,
I'm already
I know. I was like,
excited.
I knew you were going to be hyped. Um, and I was watching that episode with my friend, and I was talking about how I feel like several of the contestants didn't maybe understand the challenge because maybe they didn't have a full concept of what a dark ride is. And my friend was like, "Well, what is a dark ride?" And I was like, "Oh, well,
I'm
I get."
glad you
I'm
asked.
glad you asked because I realize there are probably lots of folks who maybe don't know about this weird little piece of like roadside Americana history. So today I want to visit the full history of the dark ride. We've talked a little bit about, we've touched on this throughout the
Yes.
podcast history, but we've never fully delved into it. In fact, you know what's funny, Penny?
What?
So I went back and listened to your haunted house episode
Yes.
to make sure we didn't like really cover this part. Because we're officially at that point in the podcast where I'm like,
Right? We're
have
gonna be
we
like,
talked about this? I don't remember. So anyway, the point being, that episode, which if you are new here and would like to listen to Penny's Haunted House episode, is called There's Always One Outside. But the weird thing is, that was our first episode of the new year in 2022.
what? Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
so for some reason, apparently New Year's make us want to talk about spooky attractions. I'm not
Me
sure
too. I
what
feel
that.
like now I'm trying to remember if it was actually on mic or if it was off mic because I remember doing that episode. You were like, "Oh, I thought you were going to talk about dark rides."
I think it was off mic.
Okay, yeah, and
Because
I
it
was
was
like,
like,
"Oh, yeah, that would," because I like obviously saw dark ride stuff while I was doing that, and I was like,
right.
"This is too much for one episode."
Yes. Well, and it was like around that same time, which I'm glad you brought this up because I forgot to like write it into the episode, but I wanted to bring this up. It was around that time that I started becoming friends with Lyatra from Thrift. Is it Thrift Kitchwitch is her
Yeah.
handle? And her partner run a like an account and I think they had a blog at one point that is called Road Dark Ride Roadside or Roadside Dark Ride. Um, and so she had brought like a catalog of these dark rides to my attention, and
Mm.
we had been talking about it right when you brought that episode, so I had just added it to my list of things to talk about on the pod. Um, and then yeah, here we are, 2 years later.
Here we are.
How is that possible?
Right?
Uh,
Oh my gosh. It is so I'm sorry to take
no,
over your
please.
thing, but I was just gonna say it is so true that like I have so many things on my list that I'm like, this would be a great episode.
And then it just
And
sits
then
there.
9
Yeah.
times out of 10, I'm like, no, I've been seized by the need to talk about this other thing
Right,
right now.
something that's come to my attention right now,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, but, finally, we're gonna talk about this, I'm very excited.
Hell yeah.
Uh, so for those of you who may not know what the hell we're talking about, a dark ride is an indoor amusement ride where people board little carts or vehicles on a single track and travel through little scenes, typically with some kind of movement or sound or music or special effects. They are not inherently spooky. Dark rides can be many different types of things.
Mhm.
But we did talk about this in, episode 3 of the
Oof.
podcast. Um, Haunted Mansion is one of
Yes.
the best known dark rides out there, and that is kind of the dark ride of dark rides. But not all of them are spooky. Like Pirates of the Caribbean is technically a dark ride, and
Yeah, Peter Pan's
Peter
Flight
Pan's
is a dark
Flight is a
ride.
dark ride. So it's more about the setup of it being an interior ride in a building on that single, in a cart with a
Mhm.
single track. But before they became what we think of as dark rides, which is what I think what a lot of us think of as Halloween people is the like spooky dark attraction, haunted
Mhm.
house type dark ride. Uh, they had a big history before they got there.
Mm.
So As early as the 1880s, there were amusement rides that were touching on this dark ride experience, but they were driven by steam powered engines. You know,
Love that.
love that. And you would, it was mostly outdoor at this point, but you might go through a tunnel at some point. It's very
Mhm.
mysterious and creepy. But as you can probably imagine, steam engines were not a good mix for indoor attractions.
Yeah, that'd be a struggle.
Yeah, not the best. So it wasn't until later, with the invention of the electric engine, that dark rides as we know them were really possible. But there was another form of power that could push something along a set course without clouding a room with steam. Any ideas of what that is, Penny?
Is it a horse?
That would be awesome. It
I
is
was like, I don't
not
know
a
if that's
horse.
actually better
I
than the
freaking
steam,
wish.
but
Oh,
I would go on a horse-drawn carriage dark ride for sure.
oh my gosh, new idea unlocked. No, but it's water.
Oh, yes. Ah,
So
yes. My runner-up, water.
I
Horses and
wi-
water are the 2 answers.
let's you know what, let's stop here and actually just discuss horse-drawn dark rides, because that's actually a better topic than what I brought
Would
today.
be so fun.
That's hilarious. So most dark rides began their lives as water rides,
Mm.
um, specifically what is now referred to as old mill rides. We'll get into that a bit more in a minute. But these were made possible by the invention of the serpentine sluiceway,
Ooh,
yeah, right? By
I'm
Arthur
already
Pickard
intrigued.
in 1891. Yeah, serpentine sluiceway, great
That's my
band
new
name.
I was say my drag name.
Oh my gosh, yes, it would be a great drag name too. Um, so the serpentine sluiceway was a patented invention that enabled a single engine to propel water through a continuous one-way flow of like a looped
Mhm.
canal route. And that sluiceway was the first installation that could basically offer that individual experience for riders, where they're in a single isolated vehicle, not on
Mhm.
like a roller coaster, train,
Yeah.
basically. Um, so even though Pickard invents this, he's in England, by the way. I didn't say that, but he's an Englishman,
I mean,
and
his name's
so
Pickard, so
yeah, Arthur Pickard. If you
sounds
didn't,
like, ooh, is he English?
just no way of knowing, honestly. But Pickard only used his installation as an outdoor boat ride,
Hmm.
but he did create the technology. So that's in 1891. It isn't until Arthur Pickard's invention catches the attention of an American named Paul Boynton. Is he American? No.
Who could say?
Paul Boynton.
Paul Boynton.
Um,
That's
and
basically Paul Bunyan.
right. So Boynton is a showman on Coney Island, and he opens the Sea Lion Park in 1895. And his big kind of claim to fame is more or less inventing the idea of the amusement park.
Mm.
Whereas before, Coney Island had a lot of attractions where you're paying a single entry fee to go into one ride,
Yeah.
on one singular attraction. Boynton roped off his section of rides, gated them together, and charged an admission fee to the grounds
Yeah.
to ride multiple rides. So in this way, he kind of becomes the father of the American amusement park.
Very cool.
Um, yeah, it is, however, extremely short lived. Like I said, this is 1895. The park is only open until 1902.
The people
Um,
weren't ready.
well, actually, they were, and that was the problem. A
Oh,
lot of
no.
competition came very quickly. And I mean, Coney Island, as we know it now,
Yeah, yeah.
this is their bread and butter. But this park, specifically Sea Lion Park, was really important to the history of the dark ride, because during its short tenure, Sea Lion Park was the home of the first indoor boat ride using that
Mm.
serpentine sluiceway. And the ride was it offered two passenger boats, and in complete darkness. So in this way, it is the first dark ride.
Yeah. Is capital dark.
Capital dark. There are no lights. And as will surprise absolutely no one, this became extremely popular very quickly with a particular demographic in the form of young couples.
I was say making out.
Making out. So yeah, in a time, this is, the late 1800s, early 1900s, physical contact between genders was not considered appropriate, especially in a public space. So this ride offered a way for them to neck each other in a public location without being seen, basically.
Sweet.
Yeah, right. Very nice. And while we don't know the name of this particular ride at Sea Lion Park, we do know that it got nicknamed Tunnel of Love, which therefore, extends this name to this type of ride for quite a ways going forward.
Yeah.
We're all still familiar with that term today, obviously. So that Tunnel of Love ride type gives way to what we mentioned a minute ago, the Old Mill ride. And the reason that it becomes called an Old Mill ride is the first adaptation of that Tunnel of Love style opens in a park called Kennywood in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania in 1901. And the design of this ride took that sluiceway system, but rather than using an engine to create the water current, they used a mill paddle wheel, which was inspired by this area in Pennsylvania. There were a lot of old log mills and water mills in that area, and so they took that concept and applied it to the ride. Why this particular ride is really important, though, is that they were the first to add this coherent storyline, which is also an important component of a dark ride, is that it should have a narrative. And this is the first time we see this because Kennywood builds a dilapidated sawmill as the entranceway to the boat ride. And they implement the boats that are shaped like logs, which I think a lot of us think of. I don't know if anyone has been to Universal Studios recently in Florida. I don't know if they have one at the California location, but there's a in Toontown or whatever it's called, there's like a log mill ride still that's very not Popeye. It's one of those old cartoons. But still has the old log boats, and you go on the water ride, and
you gotta get in that log boat.
So by adding all these elements that are telling the story of you going through this log mill and riding the log down the river, they add the narrative story element. And fun, interesting fact, this ride, even though it's seen a lot of changes over the years for safety and such, is still operational today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which we'll get into that a bit later, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Almost every single ride I read about during this research was like, sadly, this was destroyed in a massive fire a few years later.
Right.
So we're into old mills. At this point, you might start asking yourself, so when does this get spooky?
Yeah, Midge.
Yeah.
Where's the spooky?
This is a spooky podcast.
Yeah, I didn't come to the show to hear about logs.
Well, it's a great question. And in 1928 is when we start to reach this part of the journey. So Leon Cassidy is a man who inherits kind of a downtrodden amusement park. And
that's just the start of so many great stories.
Yes. And so they're trying to find ways to generate revenue to bring this amusement park back to life. And these log mill rides are very popular. They know they need a mill style ride to drive revenue. However, they are expensive to build and expensive to maintain because of the water aspect and everything about that. So Leon Cassidy starts working on a way to have that same experience without water. And by using the same similar technology that bumper cars use, he discovers the first single rail tracked cart. He creates that technology.
Mhm.
Uh, this is a little side note. It is important to the story, but I think it's very funny. So they're trying to name this single cart, single rail technology, and they have a contest to see who's going to be able to name it.
Ooh.
And a little girl wins the contest for calling it the Firefly, based on the sparks on the rails
Ew.
when it's going through.
Don't
And
love that.
while she wins, Leon Cassidy and his business partner are like, you know what, maybe we don't want our ride
This may be bad.
in a wood building associated with the idea of fire sparking. So later down the line, a customer says that the ride made him feel like he was being twisted into a pretzel while he was riding it, and the Pretzel Amusement Ride Company comes to be.
Cute.
Um,
I'm like, I see where suddenly the comment about all of these rides burning down suddenly comes clear.
yeah. Well, and a lot of them are. The appeal of a lot of these rides later down the line was that they were cheap and quick to throw
Yeah.
up for like
Yeah.
traveling amusement parks. They were plywood, you could paint on them. But they're kindling basically. But so the name Pretzel Rides becomes kind of synonymous with the dark ride at this point. They early on were total, again, like the log ride, total darkness. And it was mostly about the sounds.
Mhm.
So the carts would trip triggers on the track, and cause things to clatter or tip over, making spooky
Mhm.
sounds, spooky atmosphere. It's a shock value thing. But up through the late 40s, Pretzel's using car powered stunts still up through the late 40s, so that those hinged cast iron bars that are set into the track basically trip when the car wheels roll over them. And eventually these build into stunts with lighting effects, and things that we think of in a traditional dark ride, like skeletons popping out,
Mhm.
animal heads, what have you. And all in all, in their time, the Pretzel Ride Company built over 1,400 rides between
Wow.
1928 and 1978. So it's a pretty hefty period of
Yeah.
like these rides reigning supreme. They were incredibly popular. They're super high grossing, and they were getting installed all over in parks everywhere, even overseas. And there is an original Pretzel Dark Ride. Well, again, of course, has been upgraded and modified I'm sure once OSHA became a
They're
thing.
like,
Um, but it does still operate at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in United Kingdom. And this particular one was important in this story because Pretzel wasn't a name in the United Kingdom that was recognized like it was here in America,
Mhm.
that moniker. So they put this under the name Ghost Train, and that name stuck and becomes adopted for the generic name for this type of dark ride all over the United Kingdom.
Mm.
So if you ever hear the term Ghost Train, that is also a similar thing
Mhm.
to these dark rides that we are familiar with. Um, so again, the original rides were about darkness and surprise. So what's interesting about this is that what most of us associate now with a dark ride, I think, is blacklight effects.
Yeah.
um, which is what, if you watched that episode of the Boulet Brothers Dracula, that was the theme of that.
Yeah, kinda the central conceit.
Yeah, it was a blacklight challenge. But really, blacklight effects and dark rides don't come into effect until mid-century, until
Oh,
the
wow.
mid like 1950s. Um, but that is when I feel too like dark rides really start to grow in popularity because, as we know, that is the time period where shock theater is in syndication and has
Ooh,
Americans in a monster chokehold.
they're in a spooky mood.
They are in the mood to be scared. And we see this reflected in the style of dark rides. This is when we get rides like Spookorama, and there are no less than 50 dark rides called Haunted House. They're all just haunted
Just
house.
haunted house. No further information needed.
But if you've ever been, especially people our age and then older than us, I think it had kind of died out, with people younger than us. But
Yeah.
if you've been to like a traveling carnival or something, you know this ride that's tucked in the back corner
Yep.
and looks like a castle and it's spooky.
Mhm.
This is what most of us think of, I think, as the dark rides of yore. However, now this is something we have talked about on the podcast before. They did begin to fall out of favor, and they take a hard tumble in 1984 when there was a fire in a ride called the
Yes.
Haunted Castle at Six Flags, New Jersey, and unfortunately, 8 teenagers were trapped inside and died.
Womp
Um,
womp.
as mentioned previously, many of these original dark rides have been lost to fires or the
Yeah.
elements. I mean, a lot of these, Coney Island and things. I mean, hurricanes and
Oh, yeah.
flooding and all kinds of things have taken a lot of the original dark rides from us. Obviously, Disney has since co-opted this idea,
Yes.
and it is the majority of what they do, and we could sit here all day and talk about Disney dark rides. I am not going to do that. If you want, because at the end of the day, what we're most interested in is the spooky aspect of it. And if you want to hear a really well fleshed out journey through how Disney made the Haunted Mansion, we have an episode about that. It's called Doom
Yeah.
Buggy Babes,
We
episode number 3.
already did that.
We already did that, and Penny. No one will ever cover Haunted Mansion with the same level of passion as Penny Snark. So definitely go check that out if you want more information about that. But um, basically, as far as the OG dark rides pre-Disney go, like I said, of those aforementioned 1,400, only 4 complete examples of those original pretzel rides remained as of 2016.
No.
Yeah. I will say, however, very cool. Since 2015, a group called the Dark Ride Project has captured as much as they can in 360 video footage from different amusement parks from as far as Australia to Alabama, with obviously the aim of capturing the experience of riding inside those rides even after they are gone. And
Nice.
that's very cool and exciting. You can find their website online and see those videos. And their main aim is to memorialize what remains of one of the most influential periods in America's horror and haunt history. This type of attraction paved the way for haunted houses
Mhm.
as we know them now, for haunt culture. And again, we have a great episode that Penny led about that. But this was the frontier
Yes.
of haunt culture, and that's really fun and exciting. There is, I wanted to also point out a great resource, a website called Laugh in the Dark. That's LAFF. That was a title that was given to a lot of dark rides. Laugh in the Dark and Haunted House are your most common ride names. But this website's great. They have cataloged what remains of North America's dark rides. And that does include non-spooky dark rides
Mhm.
as well. But if you have the urge to look up if there's one you can experience near you, this is a great resource. Um, a lot of There's a lot of fun things now, as we aged into the new modern time. Dark rides started leaning into IPs.
Yeah.
So I know, like, I've been on a Scooby-Doo dark ride before, which was very, very fun. um, there's all kinds of we have one in KC. I actually don't know if it's still standing. But our Worlds of Fun amusement park has one called Cyclone Sam that I always loved growing up. It's like a tornado. You're like trapped in a tornado and there's all these black light animals flying by
Ew.
you and stuff. Um, but definitely check out that website. If you have never been on a dark ride, try to find one and go experience it, because there will come a time when these are no longer in commission anywhere, I believe.
Yeah.
The thrill is not the same, obviously, as it once
Yes.
was. But they're very kitschy, very campy, super fun, and like I said, such an important part of the history of haunt culture and where we're at with horror and haunts today. um, before we close out, I do want to open space. Penny, do you
Mhm.
have a local dark ride, or is there one besides Haunted Mansion that you've been on that you love?
See, I've been trying to think about this because I definitely feel like for most of my amusement park going days were at a time that I would not have wanted to go on a
Sure.
ride where
Makes
things
total sense.
were popping out
Yeah.
at me. Um because I don't think nothing is we so I the closest amusement park to me would be Six Flags Great America,
Mhm.
which is in northern Illinois, and I don't remember going on anything. I don't remember, like, any, like, famous dark rides on there.
Yeah.
I definitely remember, like, seeing them set up at, like, the rickety one at the state
Uh-huh.
fair and, like, staring at it from outside and being like, "I can't go in there." So,
I
unfortunately, I don't have a lot of non-Disney dark ride experience.
That is okay. I do, I want to do again, adding to that ever-growing list, a follow-up episode because in the research for this, I found something that they were like, "And this led to the first haunted swing ride." And I was like, "What
What?
now?" And
Say
that brought
what?
up a whole other realm of these, like, haunted swing show rides and madhouse rides that are
Ooh.
something similar but also completely different that looked like I could do a whole other episode. So, if that's
Oh,
something that intrigues you, let us
yeah.
know. If you like these
Well, if you're
amusement
a
park,
spooky ride enthusiast.
yeah, keep us posted. But yeah, this was a fun little delve into this. I'm definitely I love any place where weird mid-century Americana meets horror. So I'm inspired to try to go find some of these rides and document them before it's too late.
Yeah.
Uh, I hope that you all enjoyed this as well, and that if you have any of your own dark ride stories or experiences, you will let us know. You can find us to do that over on Instagram at Ghouls Night in Pod.
Mhm.
And if you, while you're over there or while you're listening here, you can always leave us a review to let us know that these topics and things are things that you enjoy listening to. You can submit those wherever you listen, or if they don't let you do that, you can send us an Instagram DM or a Spotify comment, which I believe is what Penny has to share with us today.
Yes, I have one from Instagram to share today,
Oh, perfect.
actually. So, this is from Maginous and Wondermous Things on Instagram.
Woo!
Very good. Says, "Here's my 5-star review. I listen to your pod on my obnoxious commute to work. I live in New York City, and when I'm doing things I loathe, laundry, dishes, you transform the mundane into the magical. So thank you
Aw.
for making the annoying things about adulting not so much."
I
Thank
love
you.
that. And
I love that too.
perfect that you're from New York. Go visit Coney Island for us.
Yeah, get to what
Well,
was it? Sea Lion World?
get to Sea Lion Park, even though I'm pretty sure it's not there anymore,
Yeah.
but
Travel back in time and go to Sea Lion Park and let us know how it is.
let us know how that dark love ride is.
Yes.
The creepy water tunnel of love. Well, thank you all so much for listening. As we mentioned, if you're looking for us over on Instagram, you can find us at Ghouls Night in Pod. And if you're looking for me, you can find me across the web at Midge Munster.
And you can find me at Penny Snark.
And until next time,
Good.
good.